Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the session. I'm Barry Pedersen from the State Board of Education. I work in the Springfield office in the Department of Assessment, and I coordinate the access test. And it's nice to see the turnout here. I understand some more chairs may be coming if you don't have one, so we'll keep an eye out for those. I'm going to be talking today about access updates, as it says. Have a variety of topics that I would like to share with you. First thing I'm going to do sort of a recap of 2022, and I think it paints kind of a picture of a rebounding educational efforts after the 2021 pandemic problems we had. I'll be talking about participation, the amount of online testing we're doing, and I'll look at a comparison of domain proficiency levels, and then talk a little bit about ELs reaching proficiency in the IAR. One caveat about that is that for the IAR part of it, I used the data file as it came from the vendor, and before, it didn't have the benefit of going through extensive corrections like I was able to do with the access data. But for my purposes, it'll be plenty accurate. And after that, we're going to talk about the transition to the 2020 standards and the timelines that WIDA is going to use for that purpose. And then I'll finish up by talking about the online speaking assessment and some concerns surrounding that part of the WIDA suite of assessments. So first I'll talk about participation. On this slide, there is a comparison of 2021 participation with 2022. We have the grade levels across the bottom of the chart, and the numbers, the end counts on the y-axis. The bar on the left, the lighter blue one, is the 2021 participation, and the taller, darker bar on the right is 2022, and there is a stark contrast in the two. The participation was way down in 2021, and it was reflected in the results. So what we see here for 2022 is actually higher than, is more testing than we've done in access for ever. It was a record high. Over 238,000 participated in access testing. Another 4,000 took the alternate access. So on the participation side, we've seen quite a rebound from 2021. And this is a graph of a chart of the online testing, which online testing is we've made the transition, I'd say. We're at 99% in grades 1 through 12. And that was our goal, is to get high online participation. The paper is not going away. We'll still be using it for kindergarten, for the alternate, for the writing test at the lower grades. And of course, that 4-domain access test is available if you have a student with an IEP that requires something like that to satisfy an accommodation, or if you just find yourself in circumstances where it makes more sense to do paper testing. If you need to do paper testing in quantity, though, you should ask for a waiver. We have a website, a web page on the ISB website where you can apply for a waiver and explain your situation and make use of paper testing if it really is necessary. So next, I want to have a slide here you might find interesting. It's a comparison of the domain proficiency levels. Those lines represent the mean domain proficiency level across the 12 grade levels, and you can see the scale on the left there. I hope you can read that. It goes from 1.0 to 6.0, and we're all familiar with what that means on the WIDA suite of assessments. And not surprising, that line at the top are the mean listening proficiency levels across the grades. So no surprise to see them there. The ones that start out low and then kind of roll around through the middle, those are the literacy lines, reading and writing. Of course, in kindergarten, they start very low, and then they quickly rise and then sort of drop down and level off. Then that light one there in the middle is the speaking test. Starts in the middle, kind of goes across, but then ends up in high school being the lowest domain score for most students who take the speaking test in high school. And it's been a controversial test since its beginning. A lot of people feel like it's too rigorous. When they reset the standards back in 2016, the speaking test, I believe, had the most dramatic adjustment at that time. And WIDA's been hearing about it ever since. And I'll be talking more about that later. But it is the most challenging domain to measure, and especially when we're trying to balance it against that paper version. WIDA was really unhappy with the paper version we were using because so many kids were getting 5s and 6s. It didn't really spread out the scores to their satisfaction. We didn't have the distribution that they thought was valid. But they may have gone too far in the last standard setting. There will be another standard setting coming up in the next few years. They may adjust it again, I don't know. But this is what it looks like right now for us. And then here's a comparison again with 2021 of students who reached proficiency in each grade level. And the blue bar on the left, that's just flat. That is not characteristic at all of what we see over the history of access testing. The pandemic conditions really flattened out the test scores in addition to participation. The red bars on the right side of each pair are much more historically accurate for us. And those of course are the 2022 scores, where we see the highest rates of achieving proficiency in grades 4 and grades 5. Again, there's sort of a picture here of returning to a more normal condition of educational progress with our ELs. Okay, so here comparing ELs who became proficient in 2022 and non-ELs. And on this chart, we're looking at all the students who scored at the grades 4, or the levels 4 and 5 on the Illinois Assessment of Readiness for the English Language Arts subject area. They met the state standard by scoring at the grade 4 and 5 level. Again, the blue bars are the ELs who have proficient scores in 2022 on Access. So they took Access in January, February, then in March they took the IAR, and these blue bars represent the percentage of those students who scored at the highest levels, performance levels 4 and 5. And you can see that our ELs compared to the non-ELs, who are both the never ELs and the former ELs, they compare quite favorably in most grade levels, especially at grade 3. Their performance is really strong. 60% of those students who passed Access also scored at those top 2 levels on the IAR in ELA. Only in grade 5 are the newly proficient ELs lagging behind a little bit from the non-ELs. So I think this says a lot about our ability to get kids ready to make that transition into an English classroom. And it's also sort of indicates that where we have our proficiency criteria set right now is working pretty well for us, although we may have to adjust that in the coming years. It's a bit of a tricky thing to pick one proficiency level that works well at all these grade levels. And we worked a lot with IAR data, which back in that day was PARC, when we were setting the 4.8. So we seem to be in a good place at that point for right now. One thing I should have mentioned earlier, this session's being recorded, and part of the recording is trying to get the questions recorded. If you have questions then, we have a microphone up here you can come up and use, so your questions can be clearly heard by everyone and be part of the recording that we're making. So we're going to have plenty of time for questions. If you have any, you don't feel like you need to wait till the end, we can kind of do them throughout. So I hope this is kind of a nuanced chart. I hope it's clear to everyone. But if you do have questions, feel free to ask. And then I have one more like this for the mathematics. And it's not quite the same picture. But again, grade 3 is really strong. These kids in grade 3 who passed access also reached levels 4 and 5 on the IAR math at a rate of 74%. It's more of a mixed bag for the other grade levels. They're very close in grades 4 and 6 and 7, and behind a little bit in grades 5 and 8. So nevertheless, that proficiency that they're gaining, their English proficiency, seems to be carrying over well, although some of these students could have taken the Spanish version of the IAR math. I don't know what the mix is here, but that's another factor that could be at play here. Okay. I'll go on. The next part I want to talk about is WIDA's transition to the 2020 standards. They are official now. They've been adopted here in Illinois, so they're being put into use. Now WIDA has the task of transitioning all of their assessments to the WIDA 2020 standards. So for all of these tests, they're going to be going through the kind of a process of item development, field testing, operational test, and then a standard setting. So we have a chart on this slide representing the planned timeline for the online access test. And they've already began developing updated access items, and they will start field testing them in 23-24 and continue to do that in 24-25. And they will be embedded in the operational test. It won't be a separate standalone sort of field test. So the items will be in the test all of our kids take in the winter. They will not count for the scores. They'll just be there so WIDA can get the data and examine how they're performing and make sure they are suitable for when they actually are on the operational test. And that will be in school year 25-26. By that time, they should have enough of these items so that the entire test will be written to the 2020 standards. And once they have that data, after the 25-26 school year, they will conduct their standard setting in the summer. So summer of 2026, they're going to have that standard setting. We'll probably get the results of that in the fall, but they haven't committed to a date yet. And once that comes out, we'll have to take a look at our own proficiency criteria, see if it still makes sense. During these sorts of standard setting events, they bring in a panel of expert educators, particularly, for English learners, and they look at the alignment between the scale scores and the proficiency levels and determine whether they need to make any adjustments based on the data they're seeing with that version of the test. So that's how they're planning to update the online access. It's a little different story with some of the other assessments. We do have some field tests coming up. The 3 assessments on this slide are all given on paper: the alternate access, the Access for L's paper version, and the kindergarten access. This year is the field test year for the alternate access, and I'm going to talk about that in length a little bit later. But all of the WIDA states are participating, and they're asking all the kids who take the alternate participate in the field test because it's such a small population. They want to make sure they get enough data to do an adequate job calibrating these test items. So the test window is going to be this February 14th through April the 17th. And it will be a separate set of test materials, a separate booklet. They won't be mixed into the same booklet. So it's going to involve the students first taking their alternate access for the state program and then taking the alternate access field test at a later time in the spring. That's for this year. And again, I'm going to cover some more details later. That's the field test for alternate. The field test for the paper access test is not going to involve Illinois. They're going to do that with Florida only. You may or may not know that Florida is entirely a paper testing state. It's actually not legal for them to put a state test online. So all of their testing is on paper. Most of the other WIDA states have made the transition to online. So it made sense to WIDA to limit the field test to just what they get from Florida. And that's going to happen during Florida's access window, whenever that is. Then there on the bottom we have the kindergarten access for L's. They're doing a refresh of that. And the field test for that will be in 24-25. That will be a voluntary field test, but it will be another standalone one, a separate booklet, a separate administration from our regular kindergarten access. The exact dates have not been announced, but they will have separate materials, and they will be, I'm sure they'll be approaching Illinois to participate in that field test. The question is the alternate access field test mandatory? And the answer is yes, we need everybody to participate in that. Correct, there will be two administration windows, one for our accountability program, and then another one for the field test. So this is what the calendar looks like for alternate access. The field test this winter. Then the following year, there will be an operational version of the new alternate access in 23-24, and the standard setting for that will be in the summer of 24. It'll be sooner than for the other tests, and they'll report out on that in the fall of 24. So it is kind of a big lift for to have the kids test twice. But we are going to get a lot for it. We're going to get a new form. We've been using the same alternate access form since 2012, so we're overdue to get a new form. It will be aligned to the 2020 standards, and they're planning to expand the scale so there will be more possible scores that a student can receive than just the A1 to P2 or P3 possibly on the current form. They're also going to develop an alternate screener for us, which we're overdue to have. That'll be a big help when we're working with this population. They're not talking about a screener for an alternate screener for early childhood at this time, just starting in kindergarten. And but they are going to develop a kindergarten version of the alternate access, and that will join. That will become, then they will have it will be a K-1-2 cluster for the alternate access. So it'll be essentially the same form as grades 1 and 2, but scored a little bit differently. So some important pieces here that we've been missing, they're going to be added, and it's going to happen pretty fast. We're doing the field test this year, and then all of this is going to happen the following year. So I am looking forward to seeing those things materialize. Click. Some important details. They want everyone to know that participants will receive an advanced copy of the alternate access can-do descriptors. Also, the results of the field test will not be distributed or reported because they're strictly for test development. And again, the window will be February 14 until April the 17th of this year. Requirements, participation by all ELs, we mentioned that, all ELs who use the alternate access, but then we also need to identify some kindergarten students who would be appropriate for this field test. We have to get data for them in order for them to calibrate that kindergarten version. DRC is planning to send out materials according to what is ordered for the alternate access, and they're going to just make an educated guess on how many kindergarten materials you might need. Of course, if you don't have enough, more can be ordered during the additional materials ordering period. One other thing they're asking is that test administrators refresh their training for this, because they've added some special instructions that apply to the field test portion. They don't think it will take very long, and they do want everyone to be well informed about how this process is going to go. If you're interested in more information, there is an alternate access field test webpage at the link on this slide. Okay, and I've thrown in this timeline for the kindergarten access refresh. It will follow the same pattern as the other tests. They start with content development, which is going on now, and then that will phase into some cognitive labs and pilot testing in 23-24. They'll do a standalone field test in 24-25. Then the operational version will come out in 25-26, so they will have the data they need for the standard setting in the summer of 2026. So three of these assessments are all going to be part of that 2026 standard setting. Only the alternate is going to be earlier because it's on a faster timeline. Okay. Now to the online speaking test. So WIDA's been hearing about concerns regarding the online version of the speaking test essentially since it came out. There are a lot of criticisms and changes people would like to see. So WIDA has followed up on that with focus groups and with surveys. There was a survey in 2021, some 2,000 people responded to, and they've sort of gotten these dot points as feedback to those efforts. There's a strong feeling that the online speaking test does not allow students to show what they can do. Consequently, the results do not accurately reflect what their ability. Many people feel like the format of the test lacks authenticity, that it's overly rigorous, and that it's fatiguing from the seat time and the listening load that is required to sit through it. And it's quite a high percentage of people who feel this way. So there's a big confidence problem. So WIDA is looking at some answers, and I believe they'll do something. I'm not sure what. They have some possibilities that they're exploring. And at the last meeting I was with, the last live meeting I was with that included WIDA representatives, they were not promising or committing to any of these, but these are options under consideration, one of them being a pause button that a student can use while giving a response. They can say a few things, pause, compose their thoughts, and then continue with the recording. Another option is a response replay so they can hear what they have already recorded. A third option is a re-record feature so they can record over what they've done or add to it. I suppose it could be a version where they just add to what they've already done. Another option is to probe for more language when students don't seem to say very much, or not very much was recorded. The test could prompt them to say a little more or to try to add a little more to their response. And then the one on the bottom there, audio input replay, is just the ability to repeat the prompt and repeat the information that was given to them that they are responding to. So in the conversations I've been part of, I think the most likely ones to be adopted are the pause button, the audio input relay, and probably the probes for more language. The other two, I've heard reservations about, the response replay and the re-record feature. Some people feel like that really changes the construct that's being measured by the test. They're not sure if they want to go that way. So what I think is going to happen next is WIDA is going to take the information they've gathered and talk to their technical advisory committee and to the executive committee for the WIDA consortium. Those bodies meet usually late November. And then once they have all of that input, they'll make some decisions about what they might try to do. And they could attempt a special study. They could add another field test to the calendar. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure WIDA will do something about the current state of the speaking test.
Is that for this year then?
We won't see any changes this year. They haven't announced any changes yet. They're still talking about what they might try. Yeah, the question is, are we allowed to help the kids along by encouraging them to say more? But once testing has begun, it's really not appropriate to do that. This is from the speaking test survey, just one little piece of it. The report is actually quite long, but these are perceptions that people shared in reaction to these 5 possible modifications that WIDA could make. The blue bar there means the respondents felt it was critically important to make this change to the test. And then that next bar, whatever color you want to call it, that darker one, means the respondents felt it was important. So 90% of the people who filled out the survey felt like these 5 modifications were either critical or at least important enough to add to the speaking test functionality. So that's a pretty loud message. And so we'll see what happens with that. So that pretty much covers what I wanted to share with you today. I would encourage you, though, to stay plugged into the communications that come out of the assessment department via the ISBE assessment updates, or what we call the listserv. We also have webinars on Fridays where we talk about the most current information we have regarding each assessment. And you can plug into those by going to the communications page of ISBE for the assessment department. This slide has important resources and contacts on it for WIDA, DRC, and ISBE. So feel free to reach out and talk to us if you have any questions about access testing. So, any questions? I'm sorry? Can you go back one? Go back. Oh, you're going to test my abilities here. Yeah. This one? Yes. Okay. It will be posted. I've run into some technical difficulties getting it online, but I think the IRC staff is going to help me iron that out, and it will be posted.
Barry, are they looking into exits for the alternate when they do all of this? Are they, thought we were moving toward possible exits? You would never exit from alternate.
Oh, the question is about establishing an exit criteria for the alternate access, and we've been talking about that for years, and I thought we would have one by now. Because we made a proposal to upper management last fall. And I don't know what happened to it, but it didn't go through. But the complication now is that even if we adopted one for this year, next year we'll probably have a new scale. And we'd have to do it all over again, which is not terrible. But it's been a long, rocky road. I don't know why we don't have it already, but I think one is coming. I'm pretty sure one is coming. Yeah? Sure. Sure.
I had a question on IAR Spanish. So it is going to be available in Spanish?
The mathematics portion
Okay.
has a Spanish version available.
Has Spanish?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you mentioned the alternate access and the students having to take it twice, are we talking about only the ones that qualify for alternate, or are we talking about all the kids?
Good question. When we're talking about field testing the alternate access, is that just the alternate kids, or is that all the access, all the kids who take access? But that field test is only for the students who take the alternate access and qualify for it. Yeah.
But they are for sure taking it twice. You're going to ask the DPS students to participate in 2 tests this year.
Yeah, the alternate access requires that these kids will take 2 tests. The alternate access for the state accountability program, and then also the field test. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
I had asked you previously through an email about students who are erroneously taking access. When you ask for the child's SMD number, and I'm wondering what's happening with that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we have We actually have a list of those kids who were one way or another erroneously identified as ELs. We've actually had sort of a steady stream of those coming through our system for years. So right now, we're collecting a list of them, but we're making modifications to the student information system to make it easier to deal with those kinds of corrections. In the past, the only option they had with CIS was to delete what's there, which they don't like to do, so they're working on a system where they can just sort of set aside that erroneous EL information without deleting it. So they need to make some modifications to CIS, and that's coming. They're working on it. I don't know exactly when it'll be done, but I hope it's done before we start access testing, because we do need to correct those erroneous EL status. Yeah.
Can you just clarify that this year there's only going to be one testing window for access and that districts don't have the availability to apply for those waivers starting a week later or a week earlier like we had in the past?
Yeah. The question is, are we again just going to have one testing window for everybody instead of the staggered options we've had in the past? And I think we're going to stay with this option of just having a single larger window rather than requesting one of the smaller ones. So there's just going to be one access testing window for everyone. Yes?
You said larger. Does that mean we're adding extra time to the 4 weeks, or?
Well, what we've done is we took the 3 windows we had before and put them all together into one large window. So it's a little larger than it was before.
But it's still 4 weeks.
It's still, well, it's more like 7, I think. But it goes, how many, are you asking how many weeks it is? Yeah, I think it was 5 weeks. Now it's more like 7. 7 weeks, a 7-week window. Yes. You mean for the alternate access? The question is why the students are taking 2 tests. One of them is for the standard accountability program that we do every year, but the second one is a field test that WIDA needs us to do so they can develop a new form of the alternate access, create the kindergarten version, and create a screener for the alternate population. So, I'm sorry? Yes, for all the alternate access grades, yes.
Barry,
Yeah. Oh.
do my inner saying here.
I love saying too. My next question is, for students, for example, newcomers that come into our school districts or that haven't been tested or screened. We have a window of, can you clarify, 14 days, 10 days, 10 school days, 14? Can you clarify how much time we have to screen them?
Oh, well.
I should know this, but I want to clarify again.
Well, I'll defer that question to Trevor. He's our screening guru
That's
now. Would you like to take that one, Trevor?
Yeah, it's 30 days. 30 days. 30 calendar days. Yeah. Not 30 school days.
Yeah. Okay.
For access testing, when we have a newcomer or a student from a state is not a WIDA state, and the window's getting ready to close, up to what day are we expected to test newcomers or new students from states or districts that they haven't taken access, that we know they haven't taken access? Are we going to the day of, or at what date or how many days before the window closes are we expected to test?
Well, when you have a student enroll in your district during the window, if they enroll after testing has begun, you're actually not accountable to give the test, but encouraged to do so that we have a.
Can you say that again?
When, when an English learner enrolls in your district after testing has begun and that student has not taken access anywhere else for the year, you're not accountable to test that student if they come in after we've begun testing. But we encourage it, of course, so that they have a continuous record of progress.
That's what she wanted to ask. I thought she needed something.
Okay.
We have another question back here.
Okay. Well, the only mechanism right now is for that school to pass them on. We're, yeah, we have to work with we're within the privacy laws that are established for the state and nationally. And unfortunately, we can't make them available in CIS until that new enrollment is official.
Is the 2023 access for kindergartners completely online?
Well, the access for kindergarten will always be on paper. It will not be an online test. Okay, I think there's one back there, Trevor.
Hi, when I receive students from the feeder schools, and I know they qualify based on the access scores that the feeder schools provide me. One of the options, how they qualify, there's no access testing from an Illinois public school. There's access testing from another state, or there's screener scores, and I don't believe I need to screen them again because they already qualify. It's a continuation of services from the elementary districts to the high school district where I'm at. So I'm wondering if there could be, if it's possible to have that as an option, access scores from Illinois, school as to qualify them when they come in as ninth graders.
All right. I'm not sure I followed that entirely. But certainly you can consider the access testing prior to enrollment in your district. That's a valid piece of information when determining identification and placement. If you have unusual circumstances like that, definitely get in touch with our office, and we'll.
Referring to is when you enter a kid that already has scores or screening, it gives you the option in the screener module of like CIS or Skyward or whatever. It gives you the option to mark access from another state. It does not give you the option to mark access from another Illinois school. So it would just be nice to have that option rather than putting not tested and then your reason why or something like that. So it's like Skyward or whatever you use to put the information into CIS to a student that's already qualified. They have that option to mark because you have access scores from a school out of state, but it doesn't give you the option to mark because they have access scores in Illinois.
Yeah. Well, if their access testing is current, there's really nothing to mark there in the screening. The EL status just continues.
Do we know the statewide average exit rate?
For 2022, the transition rate was 6.2%,
Thank you.
which is up considerably from 2021. But
Will the screener be online ever?
I'm sorry.
Will the screener ever be online?
The question is, will the screener ever be online? I doubt that, but there is an online screener, but do you mean like a remote screening?
Yeah, not a remote screening where it's all scored online. Is there one already?
Yeah, we have online screening. It's not remote screening so much. I mean, the test administrator has to be present with the student.
We have another question back here.
Yeah.
WIDA A&M screener is there, you score it online, is there?
Another question?
Hi, I know a couple years back there was conversation about alternate exit criteria for either students with IEPs or for the alternate test. Is that still in conversation?
Yes, it is. We thought we had a proposal that would be accepted a year ago, and it kind of disappeared somewhere. But so we'll continue to work on that. I fully expect we will have an alternate access proficiency criteria. Anyone else? If not, feel free to hang around if you'd like to discuss. Oh, we have one here.
For the kindergarten model, that's going to be new for next year. We're supposed, for preschool screen that we do in the spring, March and April, are we going to use the new or no?
I didn't quite hear all that.
Okay, so the kindergarten model that is expected to be used for next school year, the new version of the kindergarten model screening, the WIDA screener, for a In March and April, we do screening for preschool students for the next school year. Are we able to use the old kindergarten model, or are we expected to use a new screening model?
Oh, for this spring, yeah,
For this spring.
we're retiring model at the end of the school year. So you could use that, you could continue using model this coming spring to do.
Is there a cutoff date, so when we get new students, at what point we have to use the new version?
Yeah, what's that, June 30th?
June 30th?
June 30th.
So July 1st, we're required to use the new one.
Right.
Perfect.
I would recommend, okay, I don't want to put a state, but I would recommend
Got a recommendation here.
Sorry, I don't want to put a state, but here's the thing. If you are going to utilize the new K screener, and in order to keep things consistent with the rest of the kinder students, I would recommend just start using the kinder screener from, because this is the transition year. So it makes more sense for you to have all of your K students screened with the same screener versus some with one screener and then others with the new screener.
Okay.
Could I just clarify the proficiency exit rate for 2021? You said it was lower than this year's?
Yes, it was quite a bit, about half. It was only about 3%
Oh, 6%.
for 2021. It was quite low, at the lowest I've ever seen it, yeah. Okay, I think there's a,
So if we purchase this new screener kindergarten, we can start using it this school year.
if you,
If we purchase it, we can start using it this school year.
well, are you talking about the kindergarten version? The new kindergarten screener? There's a version you can purchase, or there's one you can download and assemble yourself for free. But yes, you can use it right now. Well, anyone else? Well, feel free to hang around and talk if you'd like. Thank you for joining me today, and feel free to get in touch with me if you have any questions about access testing.